We're going to get to work immediately for the American people. And we're going to be doing a job that hopefully you'll be so proud of your president. You'll be so proud.
There's no doubt that the result in the 2016 presidential election was a surprise, at least if you were setting your expectations based on the polls.
In 2016, polls in battleground states showed then-candidate Donald Trump trailing Hillary Clinton ahead of the election.
And look at that. That's the Michigan voters. Yeah, she's ahead by 7.
Pennsylvania is also looking like Clinton country. She's up 8 points.
The latest poll numbers show Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump among Wisconsin voters.
After narrowly winning those states 4 years ago, state surveys this year show President Trump is trailing again in key battlegrounds. The president is also lagging behind the Democratic nominee in national polls. A recent Wall Street Journal NBC News poll showed Joe Biden ahead of the president 53% to 42%. So some voters are left wondering, how accurate are the polls this year?
You know, most of the pollsters are corrupt as far as I'm concerned. If we believed in pollsters, we wouldn't be here right now.
So what happened 4 years ago? An evaluation of 2016 polling found that national polls were generally accurate. Pew Research Center's Courtney Kennedy, who chaired the report, says, that report, in combination with subsequent analysis of data, shows that there were issues with state-level polling, including a late move towards Trump among undecided voters in some swing states, which earlier polls missed. A technical error in which pollsters didn't weight their surveys accurately, so they weren't representative of the populations they were trying to measure. And unexpectedly high turnout among rural voters who previously weren't likely to vote. These are some of the lessons pollsters have had to reckon with as they work to accurately capture the mood of the electorate in 2020.
Ideally, a poll starts with a random sample from everybody in the state or everybody in the country. And that's important because, it literally means that everyone had a chance of selection. And it means that the people you sample will be representative of everybody in the state or everybody in the country.
But cell phones have made building that random sample harder and more expensive.
If you go back a number of years, almost everybody had a landline phone. And when you called, someone would pick it up.
A Pew Research Center study looking at response rates to their telephone surveys showed that in the late 90s, 36% of people who were called agreed to participate. By 2018, that number had dropped to 6%. The shift to cell phones brings an added cost. That's because pollsters can use autodialers for landlines, but not for cell phone numbers, which means the person conducting the poll has to manually dial each number. These factors have given rise to new and different types of polls.
Everybody wants to do interviewing online, right? Because that's much more in touch with just where society is at and people's lifestyles. But there is no way to draw a random sample of Americans online.
A pollster will put up an ad online and invite people to come in. Now, that's not a random sample anymore. By definition, you're excluding people who aren't on the internet or might not be on Facebook or a shopping website when you're putting up your ad to solicit them. So not everyone in the country has an equal chance to be in your poll. That means that your sample does not necessarily reflect the public and the world as it really is.
To account for this, some pollsters use a process called weighting, which means they adjust the survey sample to match characteristics of the population they're trying to survey.
Let's say there are not enough Hispanic women in the sample. Anyone who's a Hispanic woman who answered the poll might count for maybe 1.2 voices in the poll rather than 1. If there are too many college-educated men, those people might count for 0.9 voices in the poll instead of 1 voice in the poll. And in that way, pollsters take their sample and adjust it to reflect what they think the world really looks like.
In 2016, many pollsters were slow to catch on to key shifts in the electorate, like the degree to which educational attainment was becoming a determining factor in how someone might vote. That led pollsters in battleground states to draw samples that did not match the true makeup of the voter pool.
The fact that America has become so much more polarized among gender lines and along the lines of education has consequences for polling. Two groups in particular are worth looking at. One is white men who don't have a college degree, often called white working class men. And then let's consider white women with a college degree. These two groups have always been different in their political preferences as far back as our polling goes, but the differences were not that great. But then in about 2010, these two groups exploded apart, and really their preferences on who they wanted to vote for really changed. When you have people separated that much, you need to be sure that you're measuring education accurately.
Kennedy says that in this election cycle, the three challenges from 2016 are still in play, but to a lesser degree.
Undecided voters breaking, in a strong numbers for one candidate late. That could happen this year, but what we do know, what's very clear, is that there's just fewer people in that bucket. And in terms of that technical issue of weighting by education, the good news is that many state pollsters who had not been doing that have fixed their methods since 2016 and added a weighting adjustment for education to their polls. So that's good. But not everybody has. Some pollsters still refuse to do that, and some pollsters, unfortunately, still just refuse to, disclose how they do their polling at all. And the third factor of differential turnout, I would expect that pollsters will have a better handle on that this time. It certainly would not come as any surprise, right, if Trump repeats his success turning out the rural vote.
We say that a poll is a snapshot in time. It's what's happening right now at the time we take the poll. But there's no way around the fact that people look to these polls as an indicator of what's going to happen, who's going to win, and they project forward. But a poll can't tell you for sure who's going to vote. We can only tell you what people are saying now. And as the electorate changes and as their preferences change, polling needs to make sure that it's up to the moment in accounting for what's changing in the electorate.